Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare
Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki jai. Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in to this most auspicious program for all of us to celebrate disappearance of His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. So now we will request His Holiness Dhanand Swami Maharaj to sing this song, Jayanilo Premadane song, which is sung in the honor of a great devotee who had passed away. I will share the screen and Maharaj is ready. So Maharaj, I will share the screen here. Just 1 second. We will, Maharaj, would you like to read the translation first, please?
I usually read it after.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Do you want me to? Okay, as long as you're actually keep nudging it up when I'm singing. Okay.
Shall we read out then?
No.
Okay, fine.
Sing first.
Yeah.
And then I'm just saying that you'll have to be on the ball just to make sure you keep in tune with the verse I'm on, that's all. Yeah. You're muted now.
Sorry, Maharaj, I've shared the screen. Are you able to see the screen?
Yes.
Thank you.
So I'm relying on you to keep it.
Sure, I will move it up and down.
Okay. So this is a song by Narottam Dastakar from the Puratam, and it's glorifying the disappearance of Supreme Lord and his pure devotees. And so this is a time of this is Srila Prabhupada's disappearance day today, which is he's the king of all Vaishnavas, Vaishnav Raja Sabha. So we're in association of devotees, and actually I was speaking to Vraj Vihari, and his spiritual master is called Burijan, and he said his spiritual master said that this will be the decade of tears, because most of Prabhupada's disciples now, they're at least over 65, and many are actually over 70, and so we can expect that a lot of them will be leaving this world over the next decade. So this is for Srila Prabhupada, to honor Srila Prabhupada and our lamentation in who's in his association. Jayanila Premadana Aruna Prachura Anilo Prematana Aruna Prachu Ena Prabhu Kota Kela Acharya Taku Prabhu Kota Kela Acharya Taku Ahamora Swarup Rupa Sanata Ragunata Patita Pava Ahamora Bhakta Juga Sahaskavira Ikake Alikota Gela Gora Natura Ashane Kutibo Mata Nale Pashibo Oranga Gunerani Di Kota Gelapa Ishabha Sangira Sangye Jikailo Bila Ishabha Bila Sangye Sangana Pai Naratamada Sangana Paya Kande Naratamada Chiyanilo Premadhana Karuna Prachu Ena Prabhu Kota Gela Acharya Chaku Prabhu Kota Gela Acharya Chaku Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Jaya Vaishnava Thakur, Jaya Vaishnava Thakur, Jaya Vaishnava Thakur, Jaya Vaishnava Thakur. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. He who brought the treasure of divine love and who was filled with compassion and mercy, where has such a personality as Advaita Acharya gone? Where are my Swarup Damodar and Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatan? Where is Raghunath Das, the saviour of the fallen? Where are my Raghunath Bhatta and Gopal Bhatta? And where is Krishnadas Kabiraj? Where did Lord Gauranga, the great dancer, suddenly go? I will smash my head against the rock and enter into the fire. Where will I find Lord Gauranga, the reservoir of all qualities?
मंदिर में
On being unable to obtain the association of Lord Gauranga, accompanied by all of these devotees in whose association he performed his pastimes, Narottam Das simply wept. Srila Narottam Das Thakur ki jai.
Thank you very much, Maharaj, for a great invocation and nicely singing. Now we'll move on to the next part of the program. That is, we now offer Pushpanjali. Ideally, the Pushpanjali is offered in the afternoon or in the morning, but most of the devotees are working here. So for the benefit of wider congregation, we have decided to offer this. There is no harm. Radha Vinod Prabhu from the temple room, he will recite, and I will repeat after him. What you could do if you are at home, you could also join offering these flowers. So I would say that take some flower petals, divide into 3 parts. And each part again you divide into 3. When we say Pushpanjali, you can offer to Prabhupada picture, Prabhupada Murti, whatever. So you can also just repeat after Radha Vinod Prabhu, but muted. I will unmute myself and I will repeat after Radha Vinod Prabhu. Hope this is clear. So let me share the screen. Radha Vinod Prabhu, are you ready?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, so let me share the screen. Over to you, Radha Vinod Prabhu.
Om Ajnana
Om Ajnana
Timirandhasya
Mirandasya
Jnananjana
Jnananjana
तलाकया
Talakaya
चक्षुर
Chakshur
उन्मिलितं येन
Unmilitam Yena
तस्मै श्री
Tasmai
Tasmai Shri
गुरवे नमः
Gurave Namaha
श्री चैतन्य
Sri Chaitanya
मनोभीष्टं
Manobhishtam
स्थापितं येन
Apitam Yena
भूतले
Bhutale
स्वयं रूपा
Vayam
Vayam Rupa
कदा मह्यं
Kadamasyam
ददाति स्व
Dadati Sva
पदान्तिकं
Padantikam
वन्देऽहं
Vandeham
श्रीगुरो
Sri Guru
श्रीयुता
Sri
पदकमलं
Padakamalam
श्रीगुरो
Sri Guru
वैष्णवांश्च
Vaishnavamscha
श्रीरूपां
Sri Rupam
साग्रजातं
Agrajatam
सहगणा
Sahagana
रघुनाथान्वितं
Raghunatanvitam
तां सजीवं
Tam Sajivam
साद्वैतं
Advaitam
सावधूतं
Savadutam
परिजनसहितं
Parijana Sahitam
कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं
Krishna Chaitanya Devam
श्रीराधा
Sri Radha
कृष्णपदा
Krishna Padam
सहगणा ललिता
Sahagana Lalita
श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च
Shri Vishakanvitamscha
नमो
Namao
विष्णुपदाय
Vishnupadaya
कृष्णप्रस्थाय
Krishna Prastaya
भूतले
Bhutale
श्रीमते
Srimate
भक्तिवेदान्त
Bhaktivedanta
स्वामिन्
Swamin
इति नामिने
Iti Namine
नमस्ते
Namaste
सरस्वती देवे
Saraswati Deve
गौरवाणी
Gauravani
प्रचारिणे
Pracharine
निर्विशेष
Nirvishesha
शून्यवादी
Sunyavadi
पाश्चात्य
Acharya
देशतारिणे
Deshatarine
नमावो
Namao
विष्णुपदाय
Vishnupadaya
कृष्णप्रस्थाय
Vishnaprastaya
भूतले
Bhutale
श्रीमते
Srimate
भक्तिसिद्धान्त
Bhaktisiddhanta
सरस्वती
Saraswati
इति नामिने
Iti Namine
श्रीवर्षभनावि देवी
Sri Varshavani Videvi
दयितया
Dayitaya
कृपाब्धये
Pripabdaye
कृष्ण संबंध
Krishna Sambandha
विज्ञान
Vijnana
दायिने
Aine
प्रभवे नमः
Prabhave Namaha
मधुरोज्ज्वल
Madhurajvala
प्रेमाढ्य
Premadya
श्री रूपानुगा
Virupanuga
भक्तिदा
Bhaktida
श्री गौर करुणा शक्ति
Sri Gaura Karuna Shakti
विग्रहाय
Vigrahaya
नमोस्तुते
Namostute
नमस्ते
Namaste
गौरवाणी
Gauravani
श्रीमूर्तये
Srimurtaye
दीनतारिणे
Dinatarine
रूपानुगा
Rupanuga
विरुद्धा
Virudha
अपसिद्धांता
Siddhanta
ध्वंत हरिणे
Manta Harine
नमो
Nama Om
गौर किशोराय
Gaura Kishoraya
साक्षात्
Sakshat
वैराग्य मूर्तये
Vairagyamurtaye
विप्रलंभ
Vipralamba
रसाम्भोदे
Rasambode
पदाम्बुजया
Udambujaya
ते नमः
Te Namaha
नमो
Namaham
भक्ति विनोदाय
Bhakti Vinodaya
सच्चिदानंद
Bhaktisananda
नामिने
Namne
गौर शक्ति
Gaura Shakti
स्वरूपाय
Sarupaya
रूपानुगा
Rupanuga
वरायते
Varayate
गौर विप्रव
Gaura Vipravaha
भूमेस्त्वं
Bhumeshvam
निर्देष्टा
Nirdeshta
सज्जन प्रियः
Sajjana Priyaha
वैष्णवा
Vaishnava
सार्वभौम
Sarvabhauma
श्री जगन्नाथया
Sri Jagannataya
ते नमः
Te Namaha
वाञ्छा कल्पा
Vanchakalpa
तरुभ्यश्च
Tarubhyascha
कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च
Sindhubhyayevacha
पतितानां
Patitanam
पावनेभ्यो
Pavanebhyo
वैष्णवेभ्यो
Vaishnavebhyo
नमो नमः
Namo Namaha
नमो
Nama Om
महावदन्याय
Mahavadanyaya
कृष्ण प्रेम
Krishna Prema
प्रदायते
Pradayate
कृष्णाय
Krishnaya
कृष्ण चैतन्याय
Krishna Chaitanya
नाम्ने
Namne
गौरत्विषे नमः
Gauratushe Namaha
पंचतत्वात्मकं
Panchatatpatmakam
कृष्णं
Krishnam
भक्तरूपा
Bhaktarupa
स्वरूपकं
Rupakam
भक्तावतारं
Bhaktavataram
भक्ताख्यं
Bhaktakyam
नमामि
Namami
भक्तशक्तिकं
Bhaktashaktikam
हे कृष्णा
He Krishna
करुणा सिंधो
Karuna Sindhu
दीनबंधो
Dinabandho
जगत्पते
Jagatpate
गोपेशा
Gopesha
गोपिका कांता
Gopika Kanta
राधा कांता
Radha Kanta
नमोस्तुते
Namostute
जयतं
Jayatam
सुरतौ पन्गोर
Surato Pangor
मम मंदा
Mamanda
मतिर्गति
Patirgati
मत्सर्वस्वा
Matsarvashva
पदाम्भोजौ
Patam Gorjo
राधा मदन मोहनौ
Radhamadana Mohana
दिव्यात् वृंदारण्य
Divya Vrindaranya
कल्प्रद्रुमथा
Kalpadrumaha
श्रीमत् रत्नागर
Srimad Ratnagara
सिंहासनस्थो
Simhatanasto
श्रीमत् राधा
Srimad Radha
लील गोविंद देवौ
Srila Govinda Deva
प्रस्तालिभिः
Adhibhi
सेव्यमानौ
Devyanam
स्मरामि
Ram
श्रीमान्
Sriman
रसरसारम्भी
Rasarasangri,
Vamsivata
Vamsivata,
Tatastitaha
Tatastitaha,
Karshan Venu
Karshan Venu,
Swanair Gopir
Aner Gopir,
Gopinatha
Gopinatha,
Triyestutana
Priyestutana,
Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi
Rapchakanchana Gaurangi,
Radhe Vrindavaneshwari
Radhavinda Vanishwari,
Vrishabhanu Sute Devi
Vrishabhanu Sute Devi,
Pranamami Hari Priye
Pranami Hari Priya,
Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya
Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya,
Prabhu Nityananda
Nityananda,
Sri Advaita
Advaita,
Gadadhara
Gadadhara,
Srivasadi
Srivasadi,
Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Gaura Bhakta Vrinda,
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna Hare Hare
Krishna
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 Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Hare,
Hare,
Hare Rama Hare Rama
Hare
Hare
Rama
Rama,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama Rama Hare Hare
Rama Rama Hare Hare,
Namavo
Nama Om
Vishnu Padaya
Vishnupadaya
Krishna Prasthaya
Krishna Preshtaya
Tale
Bhutale
Srimate
Srimate
Bhakti Vedanta
Bhakti Vedanta
Swamin
Swamin
Iti Namine
Iti Namine
Namaste
Namaste
Saraswati Deve
Saraswati Deve
Gauravani
Gauravani
Pracharine
Pracharine
Nirvishesha
Nirvishesha
Punyavadi
Sunyavadi
Pasyatya
Vachatya
Desatarine
Deshatarine
Kesha Pushpanjali
Esha
Desha Pushpanjali,
Pushpanjali Esha
Kesha
Pushpanjali
Pushpanjali
Esha
Desha
Pushpanjali
Pushpanjali,
Esha Pushpanjali
Esha
Desha Pushpanjali.
Pushpanjali Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Second time, brother.
Namo
Nama Om
Vishnu Padaya
Vishnupadaya
Krishna Prasthaya
Krishna Preshtaya
Tale
Bhutale
Srimate
Srimate
Bhakti Vedanta
Bhakti Vedanta
Swamin
Swamin
Iti Namine
Iti Namine
Namaste
Namaste
Saraswati Deve
Saraswati Deve
Gauravani
Gauravani
Pracharine
Pracharine
Nirvishesha
Nirvishesha
Punyavadi
Sunyavadi
Pasyatya
Vachatya
Desatarine
Deshatarine
Kesha Pushpanjali
Desha Pushpanjali,
Kesha Pushpanjali
Esha
Pushpanjali,
Pushpanjali
He sent me a YouTube. Oh,
Pushpanjali
okay.
Esha Pushpanjali
Talk to
Srila
him on the phone if you
Prabhupada ki
Vishnu Padaya
Vishnupadaya
No, it's fine. I can't do anything. Look, nothing's happening.
Just
It's just like,
Bhutale
Bhutale
Srimate
Srimate
Bhakti Vedanta
Vedanta
Swamin
Swamin
Iti Namine
Iti Namine
Namaste.
Namaste.
Saraswati Deve.
Saraswati Deve.
Gauravani.
Gauravani.
Pracharine.
Acharine.
Nirvishesha.
Nirvishesha.
Shunyavadi.
Shunyavadi.
Pasatya.
Vacharya.
Deshakarine.
Deshakarine.
Esha Pushpanjali.
Esha Pushpanjali.
Esha Pushpanjali.
Esha Pushpanjali.
Esha Pushpanjali.
Esha Pushpanjali. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Everybody can offer their obeisances to Prabhupada before we begin Harti. Krishna Pada, Krishna Prishta, Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachari Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pracharya Deshanayane Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, Hare Krishna, I can see our guest speakers. Is Grace Krishna Dharma Prabhu and his wife Chintamani Mataji, both are there online. Thank you very much for joining in. We are just running a few minutes late. Kindly bear with us. We're just going to do quick Aarti to Srila Prabhupada, and after that, we will hand over to you both. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for your patience. Appreciate. Sorry, my camera was not on. I'm so sorry. Just noticed.
Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma Andumohi Savadhana Mate Andumohi Savadhana Mate Andumohi Savadhana Mate Jahara Prasade Vedavatoriya Jahara Prasade Vedavatoriya Krishna Prapti Hoja Krishna Prapti Hoja Guru Charane Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So Hare Krishna, everyone. Once again, we welcome everyone to this program today. So let me just give a little brief introduction about our guest speakers. I'm just adding them to the spotlight. You all can see. Welcome, Krishna Dharma Prabhu and Chintamani Mataji. So you are not new to Manchester, I can tell you. You are our seniors in Manchester. You lived here for long and you manage this temple. So somehow or other, it is Prabhupada's arrangement that we are having your wonderful association this evening. Thank you very much for kindly agreeing to be with us and to enlighten us, all of us on this wonderful occasion. Really appreciate. I've seen once Chintamani Mataji giving class in Manchester, but I've never heard His Grace Krishna Dharma Prabhu speaking in Manchester. So it's nice. Maybe Prabhuji must have spoken before a long time ago, something like that. But this is nice, very nice to have Krishna Dharma Prabhu with us. Just a very brief introduction. They've been in the movement for approximately 40 years or so. So wonderful to have them. And they've written number of books. And everybody knows, as soon as they see Mahabharata, they remember Krishna Dharma Prabhu, Ramayan. And also now Prabhuji is doing the Srimad Bhagavatam as well. There are a number of other books. So they've written a number of books. And they also maintain this website, Improving Sadhu Sangha. And they like reading Srila Prabhupada books and preaching. So that is their, I think, business. Let's put that way. Always reading and giving this to others. So very welcome. Both of you. So if you can unmute and with 3 loud Hari bols, welcome these 2 wonderful devotees. Haribo.
Haribol, Haribol, Hari Haribol.
Hare Krishna.
So Hare Krishna, Prabhuji and Mataji, it's over to you. Please.
Can you give us we will share a screen?
Yes, I've given the co-host rights, so you can now share the screen.
Okay, great. Okay, let's go. Why isn't it working? Jan's gone. I've got it. Done it. Can you see it?
Yes, Prabhu. Beautiful. Yes.
Yes, Prabhu.
We can hear you well as well.
Brilliant. Okay, so well, thank you. I'd like to start by saying thank you very much for having us today. We're honored to be joining you. And as you mentioned, we have very fond memories of Manchester, having spent 15 odd years there. And it's nice to be back, even though it's only virtually. So we'd just like to share a few slides and some quotes from Srila Prabhupada, and we'll speak a little bit. And we'll leave some time at the end. I think we've got 55 minutes, so we'll leave some time at the end for questions and discussions about what we've said. So I'd just like to start by doing Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya 3 times so we can all join in. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Thank you very much. So, Srila Prabhupada's Disappearance Day. We'll start with the first slide. I'm going to hand over to, excuse me, Chintamani to start the class. Let's just get it going. Okay.
Hare Krishna Prabhus, I'd like to thank Gaur Nataraj Prabhu for so kindly inviting us to join you in Manchester. And also I'd like to offer my most humble obeisances to His Holiness Dayananda Swami, whom it's very nice to see after so long. So even though today is Prabhupada's disappearance, the theme of our presentation is that Srila Prabhupada continues to live with us in sound. He's very much present in his Vani form. Or as Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur so eloquently put it, would you like to read?
He reasons ill who says that Vaishnavas die, when thou art living still in sound. The Vaishnavas die to live, and living try to spread the holy name around.
So this is the main theme of today's presentation, that Srila Prabhupada is alive and well in his Vani form, in his sound form. And if there is a little bit of time at the end, which we hope there will be, unless we have to stop quicker than we expected, we would, if you don't have questions and comments that you'd like to share, we will probably ask you questions like, what is the theme of today's presentation? So please bear it in mind. The theme of today's presentation is that Srila Prabhupada continues to live in his sound manifestation. So should we go to the next slide?
Yeah.
Now we're going to show you quite a few different slides with excerpts from Srila Prabhupada's conversations, interviews, lectures, books, where Srila Prabhupada repeats this again and again. He himself testifies that when he physically leaves us, he will continue to be with us in a very real way in his books. And in these quotes that we share with you, he will urge us to continue to associate with him and benefit from that association. So this first quote we have from you is from a press conference in 1975. Would you like to read?
Well, what will happen to the movement in the United States when you die? Srila Prabhupada, I will never die. I shall live forever in my books, and you will utilize.
I will never die. I will live forever in my books. Should we go to the next one? So this next quote is again on the same topic, that Srila Prabhupada continues to live with us in the form of his books. And this is from a morning walk in 1975. Would you like to read?
So in my absence, you read the books. What I talk, I have written in the books. You can associate with me by reading my books.
Yes. Sometimes we all feel, any one of us who didn't have Srila Prabhupada's direct physical association, we can feel a sense of how unfortunate I was and how fortunate were those who had his personal direct association. But in quotes like this, Prabhupada keeps reminding us that each and every one of us can become fortunate, and each of us can associate with him simply by reading his books. Would you like to say something?
Yeah, I was recently. I've been watching the Srila Prabhupada Memories series by Siddhanta Prabhu. I think some of you may have seen those, or some of them at least. I did a marathon of watching all 80 of them, and something that came over very prominently, very strongly in hearing all of these disciples of Srila Prabhupada share their memories is that that he really was non-different from his books. And I was hearing devotees who didn't really get that much association with Prabhupada. They did get some, but they had to really take shelter of his books. And one I remember specifically said that he'd had some experience before of meeting authors of books, and you read a book and then you think, well, I really want to meet the author. You're so impressed by the book, and then you meet the author, and it's a real disappointment. They say never meet your heroes, because they're never quite what you expect them to be. But he said when he met Srila Prabhupada, he couldn't see any difference. He was like, here's the living Bhagavat. The books I've been reading are right here in this person. That they really were struck by that. And so many of the devotees, the disciples, said the same thing. So that really impressed me.
So I think one of your main points is that it's non-different associating with Prabhupada's books to associating with him.
He's the person Bhagavat.
Yes. And we get that full benefit through his books. That's one of the points you're trying to convey.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So should we go to the next?
Sure.
Quote? Now, in this excerpt, Srila Prabhupada makes a very similar point, but this time it's in a lecture in 1972.
I am therefore so much laboring hard that before my leaving this body, I may give you some books you can enjoy after my death. So utilize it. Read every shloka nicely. Try to understand the meaning. Discuss among yourselves. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. That is our mission. Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Abhadra, we have got so many dirty things within our heart. So these dirty things can be cleansed simply by Krishna consciousness.
So again, the main point is that Prabhupada worked so hard. I mean, we hear that, he'd be preaching up until 10 or something, have a 2-hour nap, and then up at 1, writing his books. He's saying, I'm working so hard to leave you these books so that we can continue to associate with him and be happy, enjoy after Srila Prabhupada's physical disappearance. So again, he's emphasizing this. Would you like to go to the next slide? Now, this is a letter Srila Prabhupada wrote to one of his disciples in 1974. And, sometimes we think that the best thing that can please Prabhupada is to distribute his books. But I did a search for this phrase, you may please me the most, because I thought it would come up with, you may please me the most by distributing my books. But there was only one hit on the database for the phrase, you may please me the most. And it was this quote that we're going to read you. Please read it.
You may please me the most by reading my books and following the instructions therein, and by becoming fully Krishna conscious in this lifetime.
So if we actually want to please Prabhupada, if we want to know the surefire way of doing it, it's read his books, try to understand them, and try to apply them in a realistic and manageable ways in our individual lives. Yeah, you had something you wanted to say.
Yeah, I did. I mean, there's another thing I've discovered from listening to the disciples of Srila Prabhupada is how much Srila Prabhupada was pleased when people appreciated his books. One devotee was describing how he was with Prabhupada and someone came in and they began to glorify Srila Prabhupada. Oh, you're such a great man. You've done such wonderful things. You're so elevated and you're like a great sage. And Prabhupada just bowed his head. He didn't really say anything. He didn't seem very pleased by that. And on another occasion, this same devotee saw how someone began glorifying his books. They said, "Oh, I've been reading your Bhagavad Gita and it's amazing." And they started saying different things about the book. And Srila Prabhupada lit up. He was so pleased to hear that someone was like glorifying his books and liking them, because that was his life's mission. He came for that purpose, to present these books to us. And he didn't really see himself like as he was like the peon, bringing the message. So when someone appreciated the message, he was really pleased. That's one thing I wanted to say. And there's another thing I wanted to say about this particular quote also, and that is that you please me most by reading my books. But it's not that you can't do other things. I mean, some of you may read this and think, well, what about cooking, or what about cleaning, or what about book distribution, or so many other services, deity worship. And I think it's, these things are obviously very important, because he goes on to say, following the instructions therein. So these things are there in the books. But first of all, we have to, read. Shravanam is the first thing. Reading means hearing. So we have to hear first before we can serve, so that we know, we have to act in knowledge. So we have to get that knowledge by hearing from the pure devotee. And that means reading Prabhupada's books. So, the other services are very important, but they should never be, we neglect this most important thing of reading to do anything else. If we're not doing this gradually, and we're going to give you some more quotes about that, you'll lose that connection with Krishna, and your service will become mundane, and ultimately it will become a burden, and you'll stop doing it. So it's fundamental to our progress in spiritual life that we associate with Prabhupada through his books.
I'd just like to share a little anecdote on this point, that giving us these books was Prabhupada's mission. And this is anecdotal, but I read it both in Shyamasundar Prabhu's Chasing Rhinos with the Swami. How many of you have read that book? I don't know if you can give hands up, but anyway, so it was a really wonderful book, Chasing Rhinos with the Swami. But I also heard it on a memory by Brahmananda Prabhu. Both of them, I've heard it from both of them. And this is the anecdote that one time, I think when Prabhupada was put into quarantine in one of the countries he went to, because he didn't have the right vaccinations, when Shyamasundar went to apologize to Prabhupada, because Shyamasundar, was his fault. He had neglected to get the paperwork for Prabhupada's vaccination. So Prabhupada was put into quarantine. So Prabhupada turned to him and he said, "I never wanted to come to this nasty place." And Shyamasundar said, you didn't want to come to this country, Prabhupada? I said, no, that's not what I'm talking about. He said, I never wanted to come to the mature world. It's a nasty place. But Krishna kept insisting, please go. He said, please go and give them these books. Just give them these books and I will arrange everything for you. So when I heard that anecdote, I realized that is Prabhupada's mission. This is his eternal gift to us. His Vapu did disappear, but what he's really come to give us are the books. And they are his gift to us. If we associate with them, our lives can become perfect. So one thing that often happens, because, Prabhupada's books, at least I don't know how many of you can relate to this, but certainly it's something I can honestly say. I find them quite hard to understand. It's not easy. They're not an easy read. I can't just sit and read them and grasp every point. I'm often lost when I just sit and read like that. So if I can't understand the books, what am I going to do? The Prabhupada's associations available in his books, but if I'm struggling to understand them, what can I do about that? So we're going to talk a little bit about this. Can I just ask, is anyone here relate to that they find the books hard to understand? Can we have any kind of like show of hands? Does anyone relate to that, or am I alone in this?
Me.
You can relate to that.
Everyone is related.
Yeah, you can relate. They're a little hard to understand. Okay, so I'm not just a big demon. All right then.
Yeah, I find it hard as well, Mataji.
Okay, thank you. So now we're going to share with you an excerpt which is on the screen now. Can everyone see what the slides on the screen? Yeah, you can see them. So this slide, this I heard actually when we were in Manchester, when we were still preaching in Manchester, and I had just read Bhagavatam Canto 1, Chapter 3, Text 44. And in that purport, Srila Prabhupada says, simply hearing is not enough. If one is not pure in mind, if one is not pure in his habits, if one is not pure in his behavior, then one cannot understand. But if you can understand, you'll see Krishna. But he says just hearing isn't enough, because if you're not pure, you're not going to understand. So after I read that, I was in my heart, I felt such great turmoil, because, I couldn't deny it, that I'm not pure. I could not deny to myself that my mind is not pure, my habits are not pure. And I felt trapped in this catch-22 conundrum, that the only way to become pure is to understand these teachings, this Bhagavatam, but I can't understand it because I'm not pure. So it seemed like a catch-22, I can't become pure because I'm not pure. And I was worrying about this. I was thinking, what's the point of carrying on when there's just no hope for me? And as I was cooking the Bhoga offering for our deities that day, we had Prabhupada later on, and suddenly this excerpt just came out and hit me practically. It's as if, the Lord in the heart understood my worry, and through Prabhupada, he was completely giving me the answer. So would you like to read it?
Generally, people cannot understand, but if one understands, he becomes liberated. If some way or other, it is not very difficult. Simply we have to associate with devotees and discuss this literature. Then we will understand Krishna very easily.
So two things about this. First of all, is Prabhupada acknowledges my worry. He says, generally people can't understand. You're right. You're not alone. Most people can't understand. And then he reiterates what he says in Canto 1, Chapter 3, 44. But if you do understand, you're liberated. And then he goes on to give me the solution out of my conundrum, that I'm not pure. And he's saying, in effect, in my mind, he's saying, even if you're not pure, I'm going to give you another solution. Discuss the books with other devotees. If you discuss, you will easily understand. And hearing this instruction became like a pivotal turning point in our lives.
Yeah, I mean, my wife was just referring to 1344, and that's where Sutta Goswami is saying that because he heard with rapt attention from Shukadev Goswami, he was able to understand the Bhagavatam, and thus now he's able to repeat it to the sages at Naimisharanya. So he uses that term nivishta, which means, hearing with rapt attention. And as Chintamani was just saying, you can't do that unless you're pure in so many things. And she listed like pure in your eating, sleeping, mating, defending, everything. And it's unlikely that we are in all of those things. That sometimes again, we'll fall down in some way or another. In Kali Yuga, it's an ocean of faults. It's very difficult. So how can we get that nivishta, that rapt attention? And this is the clue that we saw, that discussion, because by this process, you engage with the subject matter. Because one of the problems with reading, when you're just reading through the books on your own, is the mind will start wandering. I'm sure we've all had that experience. You'll be thinking about, I've got to cook the dinner. What shall I cook? Or a problem at work, something's troubling you, or with your children, or anything. There's so many different things that are constantly going on in the mind, and just taking our attention away so that we can't give that full nivishta, rapt attention. But when we discuss it together, we sit down, then we engage with it, and then we have to think about it. And you'll see, I mean, those of you who've already examined the website will know a little bit what I'm talking about. But by these processes that we've found from Srila Prabhupada, it really does enable that rapt attention, that hearing, you know, that you've really focused, and the other things in your mind just fade into the background. And you start getting that purification, that benefit of hearing, the nasta presho badreshu, you know, the removal of the unwanted things. So
before you go, I just want to add something to what you were saying, Swami, because my husband was talking about reading alone and how our mind is wandering. But I find the same thing when I'm listening passively to a lecture or class. I mean, how many of you here are your minds wandering to something else? When we're just sitting down and someone is talking at us, it is just so easy for our mind to wander to something else. I mean, does anyone else have this problem, or am I the only one?
Wander to the phone or something. Yeah.
There is such a thing called pretend listening. Pretend listening. I'll describe it, and then I'd see if anyone can be honest and tell me if they've ever do this. Pretend listening means we're all like, yeah, and we're putting on the show of listening. Our heads are nodding. But in our mind, we're not hearing a thing. We're thinking about what I want to say or something else completely. You know, the lights are on, but there's no one home. Does anyone ever do this?
3 hands have gone up.
Okay, 3 hands have gone up. Thank you. I'm not alone. Yeah. So when we do discussions, we can't do this because, thank you. Thank you for the honesty. I really appreciate it. So, one of the things about discussions is we can't do this because in discussions, we're asked to, as part of the discussion process, to repeat back what we heard in our own words. So that makes us hear with nivishta. You know, just for that half hour or 45 minutes we do our discussion, we're forced to keep listening because we know we're going to have to repeat back what I just heard. And that forces us to listen with attention.
Yeah. That's so true.
Yeah.
Should we move on?
Yes, thank you. So this is another excerpt. There are many, many excerpts, and we were a little bit struggling to know which one to put in for you and which one to leave out. You'll see so many more of them on the website, Improving Our Sadhusanga. But here is one from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text 1 purport, which talks about the power of discussions to help us progress in our spiritual lives. Swami?
Yeah, discussion of Krishna is very potent. And if a fortunate person has such association and tries to assimilate the knowledge, then he will surely make advancement towards spiritual realization.
So please note some things in this little excerpt. It's very potent. Discussing Krishna conscious philosophy is very potent, means it's powerful. It's very effective. The second thing is to have the association of someone that we can discuss with is a sign of great fortune in our lives. And the third is, if we take that opportunity and actually do the discussions, guaranteed we will make advancement in our spiritual lives. Prabhupada says he will surely. Prabhupada is giving us his seal of guarantee. You do these discussions, it doesn't matter where you're starting from. You may be starting from ground zero. You discuss, you're very fortunate. You actually do it and you will make spiritual advancement. Isn't that amazing to have Prabhupada's sense of guaranteeing our success if we just do this one small, simple thing, discuss his purports?
I think that purport says that Krishna is full of potencies, right? Doesn't it say something further in that one?
It says more about that in that.
Yeah, that same. That's a good purport to read, actually. That really inspires you to, and you can unlock the potencies of the purports by the process of discussing together. Krishna really helps. He says that actually, that I'm not in Vaikuntha right now, he Tishtami Vaikuntha, but I'm there where my devotees are together discussing my glories. So, the potency is there, the Lord is there when we sit down and discuss together.
So this is a letter that Srila Prabhupada wrote to Tribhuvannath in 1972, where he again stresses the importance of us coming together and discussing his books, but he begins to give some clues about how to do it, because there are some problems that arise when we discuss. And I don't know how many of you, I will describe one of the problems we've experienced in the past and see how many of you have had this. When we come to discuss with another devotee, it's very likely they will understand the same passage differently from us. And then a problem that can arise is we start arguing. I'm right, you're wrong. So has anyone had this experience? If you have, it'd be lovely to see your show of hands, that you come and you're discussing something, someone sees it differently from you, and immediately there's some kind of combat going on, even on a subtle level. Thank you so much for those of you who raised your hands. It makes me feel not alone in this world. So yes, now in this excerpt, Prabhupada gives us a clue how to rise above this problem, how not to turn every discussion into a fight.
I am very much stressing nowadays that my students shall increase their reading of my books and try to understand them from different angles of vision. Each sloka can be seen from many, many angles of vision. So become practiced in seeing things like this.
Yes. So here Prabhupada says, every shloka, it's legitimate for people to see the same shloka, the same passage in a different way. It doesn't have to be one is right and one is wrong. It's a little bit like that example of is it the 5 blind men or the 6 blind men, I forget, who are trying to understand what is an elephant. So one of the blind men takes the trunk, one takes the tail, one touches its legs, one touches its body, and each of them describe the elephant differently. One says it's a snake, one says it's a rope, one says it's a tree, one says it's a barn, Now imagine if they all began fighting with each other, but they can't get a resolution through fighting because their experience of the elephant is legitimately different. But if they can, instead of fighting, come and put their different lights together, they'll all get a much better understanding of what an elephant is. So in this shloka, Prabhupada is telling us, he says, when you come to discuss, don't just fight because you see things differently. Practice seeing things from different angles of vision. So practice means make an effort to see it from the other person's point of view. Give some validity to the other person's perception. It may be different from your perception, but make an effort to see it from their perception. And this is one of the things that we very much encourage people, that in order to stop our discussions from disintegrating into fights, to practice empathic listening and seeing things from the other person's perspective. It's something Srila Prabhupada wanted. It's something, if we can incorporate into our discussion habits, will very much benefit all of us.
I'm reminded of Lord Chaitanya, how he was able to glean out 61 meanings, as some of you will know from the Atmarama verse in the Bhagavatam. And then he went on to say, I've just given you some, but actually, there's unlimited meanings there. And I've also heard Srila Prabhupada say that about the Bhagavad Gita. He said each Gita verse can be understood in so many ways, unlimited ways, he said, obviously many, many ways. So, and it's really helpful when we discuss together, because we get different perspectives. Sometimes, we see things in a certain way. Obviously, when we're reading on our own, we're going to see things from our particular lens, our conditioning, our modes of nature. And we may have a tendency to interpret things in a way that suits our likes and dislikes, our conditioning. But when we're discussing with other people, we're confronted with other angles of vision, different points of view, because we're all different. So it really does help to open the mind and, to see things in a broader way. And sometimes to realize that possibly the way we've seen things for a long time wasn't actually correct. I've had that realization many times now, that some of my cherished assumptions have not been right. you know, once I've actually analyzed and really discussed with other devotees, and then it becomes clear, you know, what the right understanding is. So this is another advantage.
So in this excerpt we're sharing with you, Prabhupada is making the point that if we're just working very hard for the temple, but we don't make time for discussions, actually our so-called work will become fruitive work, karmi's work, and we'll lose the really important essence of devotional service, that for our work to become devotional service, we have to also be regularly meeting with other devotees and discussing the books. And if we fail to do this because we're so busy working, our work will just degrade into karmi work, fruitive work. And you know, fruitive work doesn't always have to mean for money. It may be some of us work for money, but we may also work for prestige or position. But if we're studying and discussing Prabhupada's books, this won't happen to us. Our work will actually be on the platform of devotion, doing it for the pleasure of the Lord. So would you like to read?
What is the value of this association? Satsanga. Satsanga means assembly, discussion. Parayanta parasparam tushanti charamanticha. If you're not interested in association, discussion, then you are finished. When you have got this center, it is not that you should be engaged from morning till you go to bed for sense gratification. That is not life. That is karmi life. You have no time for satsanga, for association. You cannot make any progress by this sort of karmi's life. We have to work for organization, but not that whole day and night engaged and no satsanga. That is a misguided policy, and it will spoil the whole structure. If this regulative principle is lost, then you are karmis.
It's pretty heavy, isn't it? I don't know if you want to change the slide, Swami.
Yeah, I'm just going to put my phone on silent. So that's, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry?
That's the next one.
Okay. So now, how can we know if we're discussing the scriptures in a correct and incorrect way? How can we know if we're doing it right? I think that's the question. Nope. No, that's not the question. But the point we're raising now, we will get to the other one, is that there is a correct and incorrect way of discussing scripture. We can do it in one way, which doesn't give us the result, which doesn't help us to advance. And then if we do the same discussion in another way, we will get the benefit. We will make the advancement. So there's many evidences for this, but I want to share one from the Bhagavad Gita. Do you want to go to the next slide? This is from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 17, text 15, which talks about austerity of speech. And here's an excerpt from that purport.
The process of speaking in spiritual circles is to say something upheld by the scriptures. One should at once quote from scriptural authority to back up what he is saying. At the same time, such talk should be very pleasurable to the ear. By such discussions, one may derive the highest benefit and elevate human society.
So two things, that we should immediately support what we're saying with scripture. So we encourage devotees that if you don't know scripture, pause your discussion and do a little research on Vedabase. There's so many ways you can research. I like using Vedabase. There's a Vedabase online. There's Vanipedia. You can even Google some things nowadays and it will take you up to Prabhupada's books, you know. So if you don't know, research and bring the evidence up. Don't just say, I heard, I read. Bring the evidence up so everyone in the discussion can see the evidence and read it for themselves, because they may see what you think was evidence for your point. When others read it, they may not see it the same way. So we must always bring up the scripture and let everyone see the scriptural authority that we're referring to. And the second thing to make it correct is the discussion must be very pleasurable. So there's so many ways that discussions can become unpleasurable. We can sometimes become hostile. We can sometimes talk down at people. We can talk over people. We can invalidate people by refusing to acknowledge their point. All of these things make a discussion very unpleasurable. A discussion, according amongst Vaishnavas, should be very pleasurable, according to Srila Prabhupada. So we treat each other respectfully, we validate each other, we listen, we don't speak harshly, we speak politely and kindly, and we always cite Shastra. These two things are crucial if our discussions are going to give us the benefit that we want. And now, in this excerpt, this excerpt is to make this point, because sometimes people say to me, Mataji, that's your thing. You like studying Prabhupada's books and discussing them. That's your thing. But I like deity worship, or I like cooking for Krishna, or I like book distribution, or I like making garlands, or whatever. So everyone to his own. You do your thing, I do my thing, and we're all making advancement. And I'm really fine with that, except hearing properly and sufficiently is meant for everybody, because our deity worship, our book distribution, our management, none of it can really be properly done if we're not hearing properly and sufficiently. One thing that immediately we've already discussed that can creep in is we can start doing whatever we're doing with a fruitive mentality if we're not hearing sufficiently and properly. So here's my evidence. This is from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 2, Text 36, purport.
Without hearing sufficiently and properly, no one can make any progress by any of the other methods of practice.
Do you agree with me that this is the point it's making, that whatever else we're doing, that's good, but it won't work if we're not also hearing sufficiently and properly? Do you agree that this is what the excerpt is saying? Hands up if you agree. And if you don't, okay, go Natharaj Prabhu agrees, thank you. Two other people agreed. 4 people agreed, thank you. And if you didn't agree, I'd really like to hear from you afterwards.
That's our whole audience, I think.
Okay. So we'll go to the next one.
That's
Okay.
Prabhupada's statement. How can we disagree?
Well,
Yeah.
you might see it differently from me. You see, you might have interpreted it differently from me. Go ahead. Now, how Prabhupada said in the last excerpt, we have to do devotional service sufficiently and correctly. What is the evidence? How can we know if we're doing sadhu sangha, if we're discussing Prabhupada? Sadhu sangha, as far as I'm concerned, means to discuss Prabhupada's books. That is the essence of sadhu sangha. How can we know if we're doing this properly and sufficiently? What is the, kind of like my way of testing that on an ongoing basis? So here is Prabhupada's answer to that question. This is from a lecture Srila Prabhupada gave in 1968, and he gives the answer to this question.
If a person is actually executing devotional service, then he must be happy. If he's not happy, then he's not doing properly. So first thing is this: he might be doing something in the name of devotional service. If he's actually rendering devotional service, then he must be feeling. He must feel happy. Then he has to rectify the process of his service, not to change, but rectify the process.
Yes. So if after many years of doing devotional service, we still feel depressed, we feel panic attacks, we feel that our relationships with other devotees aren't good, we feel discouraged, there is something wrong, or probably if it's not wrong, we're not doing enough sadhu sangha. Either we're not studying Prabhupada's books sufficiently, or we're not studying Prabhupada's books properly. Because if we're doing that hearing properly and sufficiently, the way we can judge is that we will feel happy in our lives. It's not that things aren't going to go wrong externally, but internally we'll always see Krishna's hand and we'll feel happy and peaceful with what's going on in our lives. So this is the crucial thing. And if anyone's not feeling happy, then my urgent request is, please really look at our website, connect with us if you need more help. There is a resource. This is our main preaching thrust. Our main preaching mission now for us, we're not running centers, we're not doing book distribution. Our main mission is to assist and encourage devotees to hear Prabhupada's purports sufficiently and properly and begin to feel the happiness we should be experiencing. So the solution, what if we're not feeling happy? What if we're reading Prabhupada's books? We even go to discussion groups. We're doing it all and we're not yet feeling happy. What is the solution? So we have 3 evidences for you, all stressing the same thing, the importance of being trained in how to associate, how to discuss. So this one is from Canto 3, Chapter 3, Text 6. This is from the purport.
Unless and until one is trained in the culture of good association, one cannot become good.
So good association is the English way of saying sadhu sangha. So there's a culture to good association. We've talked about some of that culture, seeing things from different perspectives, always citing Shastra, being very pleasant in the way we deal with each other. So, if we're not experiencing the benefits, it means something in the way we're doing our sadhu sangha is not quite correct. And Prabhupada is saying it requires training. We will bring with us our birth culture. And if our birth culture has been in Tamagun or Rajagun, which I'm sure none of yours has been, but certainly mine was, we're going to bring to our discussions our past habits. And to change, we require training. And as we learn how to do the discussions better, automatically we will come into the mode of goodness and we'll begin to experience the happiness of the mode of goodness.
Yeah, this training that we're talking about it's not something that we've kind of come up with independently. It's really been gleaned from Prabhupada. Each principle, if you do look at the website, then we show the background and the evidence where Srila Prabhupada himself has been giving these directions to help us. Like obviously this one is telling us we need to get trained. So then the first question is, well, who's going to do the training? And what is that training? So it's really Prabhupada himself, and we've just systemized many different things that he stated into this sadhu sangha process that we are now presenting. So it's not it's not a concoction, basically.
So here again, Prabhupada is making the same point. This excerpt is from Teachings of Lord Kapila. And again, he's making this point that it does take a little training. If currently we're not happy, it's probably because our sadhu sangha is not right. And if we want to improve our sadhu sangha, it does take a little training. So this quote is from Teachings of Lord Kapila.
When discussed among devotees, Krishna Katha is pleasing to the heart and ear. This requires a little training, and this training is given by the devotees.
Yes, I really want to concur with my husband because on our website now, every Saturday, I don't know if any of you have seen it, but every Saturday, I'm trying to model the discussion process. I have a live stream on Facebook and I bring on to the screen with me other devotees, and we're beginning to discuss Prabhupada's Gita. And we're trying to illustrate this. And so in one of our discussions, a devotee said, well, Prabhupada's not giving the training, you're giving the training. So my point is this, I don't consider myself a devotee. I am trying to be a devotee, but I'm not actually a devotee. And if I was to say to you, you must discuss from different angles of vision, why should you take that from me? I'm not saying that. I'm telling you, I've heard Prabhupada say that. I tried it in my life and it's helped me. Prabhupada said it, I've tried it, now I'm just passing it on. So the training is coming from Prabhupada. We on our website have put these 16 principles. All we're doing, it's not that we even started with, let's try to convince devotees they should discuss systematically. Let's see if we can find some evidences for that. No, we just heard things constantly where Prabhupada saying discuss systematically. So we put all those quotes together and we present it as an evidence. We didn't start off with any agenda, any idea of how sadhu sangha should be done. We started off thinking, how do we become happy? And then the quotes started coming to us, we applied them, and now we're sharing them. So everything on that website is coming from Srila Prabhupada, and then our attempts to apply them and the experiences we had. So the training really, as far as I'm coming from, far as I'm concerned, as my husband said, is coming from the actual devotee Srila Prabhupada. Should I carry on?
Yeah.
So again, on the same point that we have to be trained. Here in this verse, Prabhupada uses the phrase, one should learn. But another way of saying one should learn is one should be trained. And in this excerpt, this is actually from a verse from the Bhagavatam. It's not a purport or a lecture. It's from a verse. The same point is saying training is required. And in this excerpt, we also hear that once we get it right, what are the benefits we're going to experience? How do we know that we've got the right training? What are the benefits will we experience? So this is from Canto 11, Chapter 3, Text 30, and it's the actual verse.
One should learn how to associate with the devotees of the Lord by gathering with them to chant the glories of the Lord. This process is most purifying. As devotees thus develop their loving friendship, they feel mutual happiness and satisfaction. And by thus encouraging one another, they are able to give up material sense gratification, which is the cause of all suffering.
Thank you. So again, the points being emphasized, one should learn. It takes a little training. If you're doing it right, your mutual loving relationships, you will develop loving friendships. You feel mutual happiness and satisfaction. It's not that some people will feel good in the discussion and other people are going to feel, terrible. Everyone, the loving relationships and the mutual happiness and satisfaction. And finally, because we're getting a taste from this, because we're beginning to encourage each other and feel hopeful and feeling a taste from it, we'll be able to give up our sense gratification. So all of these things will come if we learn how to do sadhu sangha properly. We're going to carry on. We're almost finished. Do we have another 30 seconds to finish?
Yeah.
Please
Thank you so much.
Please take your time.
So this is now really coming to the end of the presentation. We'd like to invite you to please have a look at the website, improvingsangha.com. We have several menus on it, but the most important menus are the principles, where we have clustered together into 16 principles, different instructions that we kept hearing from Prabhupada that we applied, and that really helped us, and which we feel is giving us a very solid understanding of how to improve our sadhu sangha. So that's the principles. There's a useful tips menu as well. The useful tips are what protocols that we developed as over the years. It took us a little time to apply the principles in a way that really worked for us. We've shared with you what really worked for us. We have been sharing it around the Manor community now since 2002. And we see that the people who take it up, it works for them too. So we put those down as useful tips. We now also have a video menu where we put up the videos that we're making, where we actually try to illustrate this. If anyone wants to get involved and do an online discussion with me or do online training, then you can please contact us or just take advantage of the videos to do yourself at home. So this is a resource which we're trying to develop, which will try to make training in how to improve our sadhu sangha available to anyone who wants it. It's the improvingsangha.com website. We also have a Facebook page, Improving Our Sadhu Sangha. Again, similar materials. We put up live Facebook discussions there. We'll try to put up gradually as my husband will be retiring from work in March, and then he'll be able to give much more time to this as well. So we'll start gradually putting up classes like this, modeling the principles of Sadhu Sangha that we're showing. So please follow the Facebook page and feel free to interact with us. We will always do our best to support you. And finally, I just want to remind everyone what was the thrust of today's presentation. It is this, that Srila Prabhupada may have disappeared from our vision, but his personal association is available to each and every single one of us through his purports and lectures. And if we make sure that we daily and properly associate with him, each and every one of us can perfect our lives. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
I think a very powerful statement.
So yeah, the question: does anyone have any points, any questions? Anything they'd like to say?
Would you mind stop sharing so that we can see you in a bigger picture? Stop sharing the screen. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Dhananand Swami Maharaj raised his hand. Maharaj, would you like to say something? Oops. Maharaj, you are muted.
Unmute.
Not better.
Better.
Yeah, perfect.
Sound, yes, sound is good.
Thank you for the presentation. It's helping us to understand the necessity to associate with Prabhupada in the right way through his books, and then actually we never leave Prabhupada's association. Thank you. One thing I wanted to just clear up in my own mind is that, Krishna Dharma and Chintamani were speaking about everybody's got a different angle of vision on reading the same thing, and I've come across that many times. And even in the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada, one purport, he explains how Jiva Goswami says this, Srila Swami says this, and Vishwanath Chakrabarti says this. And Prabhupada says, for the purpose of this purport, we'll take the advice of Jiva Goswami. He doesn't say the others are wrong. So, that's, agreeing with what you were saying. But then later on in the conversation, you actually said that you were speaking with somebody and then you found out that you were wrong. Seems like a bit of a confusing situation, that there's different angles of vision, but you found you were wrong in one situation. So you could just elaborate on that for us.
Yeah. Okay. So you're saying, you agree that there's different ways of seeing things, and it's confirmed by the acharyas also that even the great acharyas sometimes see things differently, and they present and we've seen that quite a lot, right, when we look at the acharyas' commentaries on the Gita and stuff. So they can have different views, and Prabhupada acknowledges it as well. So that's one thing. But then I was saying that it's possible you may find yourself mistaken sometimes in your understanding. So how do we reconcile those two things?
I understood, Maharaj. Hare Krishna, Maharaj. So nice to see you. I understood, Maharaj, to mean that you said that sometimes you came to the conclusion you were wrong. He's saying, yeah. How did you come to the conclusion you were wrong if your understanding is legitimate?
Yeah, I mean, well, the one thing I'd say about the process of discussing the books is that Krishna enters into it. So, you become like, you're sensitive to the Lord's guidance more, I think, when you're associating very closely with the books and with Srila Prabhupada, the pure devotee, and Krishna's entering into the dynamic. So you just get the realization. I mean, that's the thing that I've noticed, that that it's very difficult to explain it, because it's an internal process. You're discussing some point of philosophy, and you're presenting your point of view, and then you hear something else, and then the penny drops. It's like, oh, hold on a second, the way I'm seeing it is not correct. But it may not. You may not get that realization, and that's okay. Sometimes we, like in our discussions, we discuss every day, myself and my wife, twice a day. So sometimes we do end up with a different point of view, but at other times, I'll change my view after hearing what her understanding is, or vice versa. She may change hers. So that's the beauty of the discussion process that I've seen. The Lord is there in your heart, and you're getting these inner realizations. I don't know if that makes sense.
It's quite deep subject matter. I mean, I'm just thinking that at some point, I gave the example of the prisoner who got a book in the Bhagavad Gita in the prison service, and they didn't have devotees visiting the prison at the time. because obviously they weren't trust, they didn't trust the system. And then eventually they allowed devotees to visit, and then the prison warders, they immediately pointed towards one prisoner who was reading. He says, "Go and talk to this one. He's driving everybody mad with this Bhagavad Gita." So they went to him and they said, "So you're reading the Bhagavad Gita. Are you enjoying it?" He said, "Oh, wonderful, the best book I've ever read." He said, "Well, what conclusion did you get from reading the Bhagavad Gita?" And he said, "I concluded that when I get out of prison, there's 6 people I have to kill immediately." So, there is right and wrong. So I'm just still confused about, okay, I might have a viewpoint on something, then realize that it's wrong. But it can be right.
6 types of aggressors. He's read about the 6 types of aggressors. Ah, yes, I know some like that. That's good. That's a good one. Now, I was going to say one other thing about it, Abhay, because you're saying, that. Sorry, Dayananda Swami. So I'm going right back now.
No problem.
Dayananda Maharaj. Is that that we quoted that verse 17:15, and that's another, it's like, okay, if someone comes up with something which is extremely questionable, then we need to be able to cross-reference and refer to other parts of Shastra. So I found that myself as well, that someone may be like coming up with a certain understanding or realization, and then you ask them, well, can you support that from Shastra? And if not, then you might have another understanding, and you can present evidence from Shastra which shows that what they're understanding at that point in time isn't entirely correct. So that prisoner who wants to go off and kill 6 guys, so then we can just, okay, let's discuss that in the light of other statements that Srila Prabhupada has made, other Shastras, and that way it's also a good way to determine if our understanding is right or wrong.
Yeah, that I can understand that we, like, I mean, with that example I gave, those 6 aggressors are there in the first chapter, and a layman like the prisoner might think that way, but when you have an experienced devotee who's read further, he can understand how to apply it, and in that way I can understand what you're saying now.
Yeah.
Would you mind, Maharaj, if I added a little bit to my husband's reply to your point? Because it was such a good point that you raised. Would you mind if I added something to it?
Yeah.
So I just reiterate what your point is. You're saying on the one hand, we're saying that we can see things from many different angles of vision, and all the angles of vision, even though they're different, may be simultaneously correct. And on the other hand, we're admitting that sometimes we discover that our specific angle of vision at any one point was wrong, and we renounce it. So how do we tell the difference between when different angles of vision are correct and when one of them is wrong? And then you gave this example of the prisoner, that his angle of vision was not what the other devotees would have thought was right. That's not what they thought he should have done. So how can we distinguish between an angle of vision which is right and an angle of vision which is wrong? Did I understand you correctly, Maharaj?
Yeah, that's right.
So very much in the same vein as what my husband was saying, but I just like to reply in my own words, is that we don't take it upon ourselves to tell the other person, you're wrong. Because as soon as we do that, we put the other person's back up. And a person convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. He may just stop saying it, but inside we don't change someone's perception just by telling them, you're wrong and I'm right. So what we do in the discussion, we reflect it back. I want to give you a little example, if I may. And this is just an example I use all the time because it's a really easy one to remember to use. And I'm not having a go at brahmacharis by saying this, but I heard that in the very early days, in some temples in the United States, the brahmacharis would spit at the brahmatrinis because they'd read this this quote from what's his name, Yamunacharya, that whenever I think of sex life, I'd spit at the thought. Now, without discussing, just passively reading, they did what that prisoner did. They extracted from that something which was not right. So they extracted from that. If I see a brahmachari who gives me thoughts that I shouldn't be having, I should spit at the brahmachari, and that's what they were doing. Now, the discussion process, we just put what's inside out. We express that. We say, oh, when I see a brahmachari that makes me think things I shouldn't be thinking, I should spit at her. Just by having that reflected back to us, it can give us opportunity to think. And if that in itself is not enough to make us think, if that thought is reflected back to us, our discussion partner, instead of saying you're wrong, says, oh, so you think we should spit at the Vaishnavis? You think it's okay to spit at Vaishnavis who are practicing Krishna consciousness? Just that may be enough to give us reason to stop. If that's not enough, the other person can put their understanding without attacking us, without taking it to the platform of an argument. Just say, that's very interesting. I see it differently. I think he's talking about the thought in my mind, not the person. And if that's not enough, then we can raise questions like, well, what about Vaishnav Aparad? So we have a whole process in the discussion where we can gradually begin to sift out, without turning it into an argument, perceptions which are potentially could be correct and are compatible with our Siddhanta, and angles which are incompatible with our Siddhanta. But it's not through turning it into an argument and having a go at each other, because that doesn't actually change people's hearts. I don't know if that clarified at all our discussion process.
Yeah, that's helped to get a better understanding. And so, the process is working already. I mean, just by discussing, we're starting to see how we can actually see things in the proper perspective according to time, place and circumstance as well, and different parts of the Shastra saying different things.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Does anyone else have a question? Did you want to say anything else, Maharaj?
Thank you, Maharaj.
No, thank you.
Just there are other people who raised their hands, so we will just quickly move. Maharaj, thank you for that. Please stay with us, and maybe if you could kindly sing Damodarashtakam at the end of the session, that would be greatly appreciated. We have Madhakumar Prabhu and Karshna Prabhu's family raising their hands. So Madhakumar Prabhu, your name appears first. Would you like to go and take only just a little bit of time, because we are running short of time?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, Prabhu. I raised my hand quite a while ago to answer to one of Mataji's point, but that's fine. Thank you, Krishna Prabhu and Chintamani Mataji. It was very nice to have you online, virtually, if not physically. Just wanted to acknowledge your presence and the very insightful discussion, thought-provoking discussion you've given us access to. I just wanted to also thank the entire family. This Friday, we will have Madhavacharya Prabhu with us as well, doing a bhajan night. So it's just very enlivening to see that as a family, you're still with us, if not physically, at least virtually. So just acknowledgement really of your continued support and association. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you, Madhakumar Prabhu, for that. Karshna Prabhu and Aharda Mataji, so please say.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for a very nice class. Very, very insightful stuff. It's actually very relevant to us at the moment, particularly, well, in the beginning of lockdown anyway, we were very much inspired to start a lot of reading groups. And we had a constant reading group where we were pretty much reading about 4 times a week for quite a long time. We made a lot of progress actually through reading Srila Prabhupada's books. And it's been really, really nice. And we've really felt the benefit of doing that. But obviously, you're bringing up that point that we need to discuss more. And obviously, we think that's really relevant. And we kind of feel in a way that we kind of hit a bit of a wall, in sense of we're reading, it's great. We made a lot of progress doing that, because I think it's a problem for a lot of people that people just don't read. So when you have the opportunity to do it, it's really necessary. But the point I wanted to ask, by reading, it feels that, because there's so many books out there, so many Srila Prabhupada's books, you really want to go through all of them and kind of get some of that nectar. But I'm just a bit, in my mind's telling me that if we spend so much time discussing these, okay, so we could spend such a long time discussing even just one purport a month, we could just keep discussing it and churning it. Then my mind would say, well, actually, you're not going to make much progress. You're not going to actually be able to go through these books because the process will be so slow. So can you just say something about, if you kind of understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah, you're saying, since lockdown, you've been engaging more with the books you've been reading, and starting to make some nice progress going through them, and feeling the benefit. So yeah, but you're concerned about, and you recognize that discussions are important, and you've been hearing us stressing that, and obviously quoting Srila Prabhupada, but at the same time you're concerned that if we spend time discussing, it's very slow, that one purport could take a month, easily, or even certainly a couple of weeks. So then we'll just go through very, very slowly if we take the time to discuss rather than just reading. So that's a concern that you have.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly that.
Yeah.
Do you have a light?
I just want to say one thing. Do you have a light? My wife, she's keeping me to the protocols.
One of the things we do when we discuss, when someone raises the question, we first reflect back their question. Then before we give our light, we ask you, do you have your own light? Do you have one way of resolving that? Has any thought come to you?
Well, probably, yeah. I mean, the reality is that obviously we're doing this like 4 times a week, and we probably need to change 2 of those sessions into discussion sessions rather than just pure reading. That's probably the best solution. So you keep making progress with the reading, but also you have the opportunity to churn it as well.
Right. So you're saying, yeah, just do both. Don't neglect one for the other, but do some discussion and some reading, so you can feel like you're making some headway through the books as well as discussing them.
Yes.
Yeah, I just think that's very good, actually, Karshna Prabhu. I just wanted to add one thing, and that Prabhupada did stress the importance of systematically reading his books, going through Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, and so on, in finally coming to CC. And of course we tend to read all the way through, and probably most of us have read the CC already, postgraduate study and everything. But one thing struck me when I was reading the Bhagavatam. Prabhupada writes towards the end of the 2nd canto that by the time you finished reading the 2nd canto, you should be free from sex life, from engaging in sex life entirely. That's so then, and then if you haven't, then you're not ready to move on to another canto. So then I was thinking to myself, well, that's interesting, because everyone does move on, everyone's reading all the way through, but probably not all of us are free of sex life. So obviously there's something about the Bhagavatam. It has that potency to free us, to liberate us. So just by the process of reading it ourselves, we're not getting that out completely. That was the point made in one of the quotes we gave in the Gita 9.1, that discussions of Krishna are full of potencies. Topics of Krishna are full of potencies, and when you discuss them with other devotees, you bring out the potency. So the potency to free us of our material attachments is in the books, but are we accessing that? Are we experiencing that? Are we actually getting that? Because by the time you reach the 10th canto, you should be a self-realized soul. You're God realized, that you're now in a position to understand Krishna's pastimes, see his smiling face. So, we feel that the nivishta needs to be there for that to happen. And that nivishta comes, at least to some degree, when we sit down together and discuss. It certainly helps. It focuses it a lot more. So for us, that's key. And it's more important than actually reading, for us at least, to do that. To actually have the discussions each morning and evening, the Bhagavatam and the Gita class, we do it together in the discussion format.
I just want to highlight some points my husband was making, so that you can maybe reflect it back. One is we can read a lot, but we're not unlocking the potency of what we're reading. So we can read up to CC, but we're not experiencing the benefits of what the CC can give us.
Sure.
You know, we're just kind of like surface, just going over the surface. But we unlock the potency of what we're reading by discussing. So it actually begins to medicinally work on our hearts and have that transformative effect. So we can read but not experience the medicinal effect of what we're reading, or we can discuss and actually begin to experience the medicinal effect. Is that what you meant?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah, it's very, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, get your point. Very, very nice. And yeah, it seems there's a lot more to unlock than meets the eye in a way, because we can just, as you say, we just sometimes plow through them, and you know, which is a lot of potency there, but but it sounds like there's even more potency that's kind of untapped.
Yes.
So, yeah, and also, and I think just finally, obviously, time is getting on. You know, one thing you've also brought up is this idea of making sure that you have the right sadhu sangha, the right people who you can actually do this with, because that's not always so easy to get that type of situation, because not everybody is so interested in discussing. You may find that yourselves, that you know, yeah, but yeah, just a final point, really.
Yeah, that's right. You're saying, you know, that we also, you know, it's not everyone's interested in discussing, so you need to find the right kind of association in order to be able to do this. You know, and that's a fact, because Prabhupada does say that you have to find like-minded devotees. He mentions that a few times, actually. So yeah, that's obviously required. Yeah.
would you mind if I added something to that, Karshana Prabhu? Because it only takes one devotee to associate with. So one of the wonderful facilities of Grihastha Ashram, of marrying a devotee, is that we have that one devotee. If we marry a person who has faith in the process of Krishna consciousness, who has Shraddha in Srila Prabhupada and in the Gita and the Bhagavatam, it only takes one person. In fact, discussions are often best with just one person, especially a person. It's not a matter of who they are, it's how well trained they are. So if husband and wife are both trained, because some of the things that can make our discussions go on and on and on in quite a waffling way and quite a non-effective way, is when we don't keep to the point, we don't cite Shastra, we ask irrelevant questions, and we just go off topic.
Yeah.
Then our discussions become like, oh. But if we're trained, we can avoid those pitfalls. Keep on topic, use questions as excavation tools rather than as opportunities to divert from the main point, and cite Shastra, so it's very on point. And if you have even one person in your life, and my humble suggestion to all grihastas is do this, husband and wife, and train your children to do the same thing. And there's an art to training children. It's done with encouragement, not with force. I have a whole video about it on our website. So I think if husband and wife are trained, you have a ready-made discussion situation. You don't need anyone outside of your ashram. You have it all there. Once you succeed, you can now share your success with other people. You can now teach them how they can achieve the same success in their ashram. You know, so you have a ready-made discussion partners. It's small, you can suit it to your time. Even when the lockdown finishes, you have to go to work. When my husband was going to work, sometimes if he had to leave the house at 6 o'clock in the morning, we'd do our discussion at 5 and then chant our rounds during the day. We can fit it in together. You know, we can always fit it in if it's just him and me. And we try to train our children.
Very nice. Thank you. Thank you both for your time.
Thank you very much,
Krishna.
Karshana Prabhu, Ahar Mataji, for asking those questions. And Krishna Dharma Prabhu and Chintamani Mataji, thank you so much for kindly giving your
Hare
valuable
Krishna.
association. Just to sum up, Prabhupada lives in sound. He's still living in sound.
Thank you.
He lives in his books forever. He never dies.
Yes.
Hare Krishna. Thank
And
you.
we can become fortunate. We can become most fortunate if we just learn how to associate properly with him.
Yeah, books are his greatest gifts that are actually asked by Krishna to give to us.
Thank you. Yes.
We take those, and the best way to, we can still associate with Srila Prabhupada by reading his books, by hearing him, and by practicing what he said in the books. What is such a wonderful presentation you made, and we look forward to hearing from you again shortly in the near future. And we are also in the lockdown, we took advantage, and our dear Radhamohan Prabhu, he had wonderfully given some advice and took a lead on creating Sangha groups. We have several Sangha groups going on.
Fantastic.
So in the lockdown, we have created at least 5-6 Sangha groups, and
Wow.
on a weekly basis, we are getting together and we are reading Srila Prabhupada books. Serially, like say in our Sangha group, we read Srimad Bhagavatam chapter-wise.
Wonderful.
Like that. So thank you very much, and really appreciate for giving your valuable time.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're leaving now. Thank you very much.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So now I requested His Holiness Dhanand Swami Maharaj to sing Damodarashtakam prayers. I will share the screen. Yes.
So where's car towels? Just a minute. Samam Ishvaram Sakchit Ananda Rupam Asat Kundalam Gokule Brajamanam Asat Kundalam Yashodavi Alukaladavamanam Param Rishamadhyanta Todruchigopya Yudam Samoho Netra Yugmam Rijantam Param Bhoja Yugmena Satankanetram Bhutsvatakam Patri Rekankakanta Itagrevam Damodaram Bhaktibadam Iti Drikspalila Virananda Kunde Swagoshami Madhyantam Akyapayantam Adiyeshitageshu Bhakta Chitatvam Puna Prematastam Shatabriti Vande Ram Deva Moksham Mokshavarim Va Nachanyam rineham vare shadapiha. Devamaksham idam teva purnata gopala balam sada me manasya virashtam kimanyay. Idam te makam bojam makyanta nihle Ritam kuntalai snigdha rakshashte gopya. Mushchumbitam bimbaratadurame manashavirastam malam lakshirabe. Modivadamodarananta Vishnu Prasida Prabhadukarjalabdimanyam Amodivadamodarananta Vishnu Prasida Prabhadukarjalabdimanyam Kripadrishti Vishyati Dinam Batanu Vihane Shamamarjam Edyakshi Drishya. Veratmajo Badamuche Vayatvat Vayamuchita Bhakti Bhajo Kritocha. Veratmajo Badamuche Vayatvat Vayamuchita Bhakti Bhajo Kritocha. Tata prema bhaktim swakam me priyachcha namakshe griha me sti tamodareya. Tata prema bhaktim swakam me priyachcha namakshe griha me sti tamodareya. Namaste studamne spuradipti damne Vadiyodaraya tabhikasyudamne. Namaste studamne spuradipti damne Vadiyodaraya tabhikasyudamne. Nama radikaya tvadiya priyaye Namo nantalilaya devaya tubhyam. Yatvadiya priyaye Namo nantalilaya devaya tubhyam. Namo radikaya tvadiya priyaye Namo nantalilaya devaya tubhyam. Ayatvadiya priyaye Namo nantalilaya devaya tubhyam. Namamishparam sakchit anandarupam rasat kundalam gokule vrajamanam. Namamishparam sakchit anandarupam rasat kundalam gokule vrajamanam. Yatada viyalukaladavamanam aram rishtamadhyanta dhrutruchigopya. Yasoda Viyalukaladavamanam Param Rishtamadhyanta Sadruchya Gopa Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Damadar Radha Damadar Radhe Radha Damadar Radha Damadar Radhe Jaya Radha Damadar Radha Damadar Radhe Radha Damadar Radha Damadar Jaya Radha Damadar Radha Damadar Radhe Radha Damadar Radha Damadar Radhe Jaya Radha Damadar Radha Damadar Radhe Radha Damadar Radha Damadar Radhe Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Disappearance Day Mahamahotsava Ki Jai
Hi.
Sri Radha Damodar Damodarastikam Ki Jai Gaura Premanande.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Dhananand Swami Maharaj, and everyone for kindly tuning in and giving your valuable association. Our next program will be this Friday, as our Madhav Kumar Prabhu had mentioned. It will be Bhajan Sandhya with Madhva Prabhu. So please take advantage of this wonderful opportunity and the auspicious month of Kartik, and tune in on Friday. Thank you all. So it's nearly 10 past 9. So I think we better retire and meet here on Friday. So Madhav Kumar Prabhu, you want to say something?
Just to close, really, that this year, because we are in slightly different times, the marathon is already on. We're not waiting for Christmas, and just in continuation with what the guest speakers were saying, we just encourage and request everyone to not just to have the books and read the discussions with yourselves, but try and share with as many people as possible. There's a drive for distributing Bhagavad Gitas. So if anybody wants to participate, please let us know and we can help you. That's it.
Thank you. I would also like to thank Ujjwalmani Mataji for taking time out to making a beautiful garland for Srila Prabhupada, and also Radha Vinod Prabhu and his family for kindly giving extra time to actually offer Aarti and arrange all other things today. Really appreciate. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Premanandi Hari
Hari
Hari.
Hari Bol.
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kupasindhubhyo cha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.
Jai.